Hello everyone, welcome to another recent reads video. These are going to be the 5 books that I finished in July. I didn't necessarily read the entirety of those books in July, but I did finish them. I tend to be a slower reader, not for the fact that I find it difficult to read, but because I really like to read for the purpose of drawing as much as I can out of a book, learning things, thinking about things, reflecting on ideas and truths. So I tend to take books slow, and I very rarely actually DNF books for that reason. I pick up books sure that I'm going to be able to finish it because I've heard enough about it, or I'm picking it up because topically it's something I'm very interested in. And so for that reason, I very rarely will DNF a book. So the first of the 5, I read Chosen by Ted Dekker. This is one I picked up a couple months ago this spring at a used bookstore when I was traveling with my family. And I'd never read a Ted Dekker book before, and so I thought I'd try it out. This is a kind of middle grade to YA. It's the first book in what's called the Lost Books series. So it's kind of like set in this alternate dimension from the real world, and there's a character in the book that is actually from our world, which this book doesn't go into a whole lot as to how he got there. I think there's other series that this is kind of a part of, but there's this, the world itself is kind of small, the dimension that they're in, and it's mostly desert, and there are patches of forest. And the forests are all centered around these lakes, these bodies of water that are healing because there is this disease that has affected everyone. And if they don't regularly wash in this water, the disease will slowly overtake them and turn them into what is called the horde, or another reference to them in the book is they're called scabs. So that's a little bit maybe gruesome to some readers. I didn't think it was a whole lot. These 4 young adults, 16-year-olds, that are chosen for the army that the guy from our world is in charge of. But along the way on this first mission that they are given by their commander, they are wrapped up and find out that they are chosen for an even bigger, more secretive task that involves the lost books of history. That's a very loose, basic overview. So I gave it 3 stars. It is a Christian fiction book. It was entertaining. It was full of action. The progression of the plot and story was always moving forward. It never felt like it dragged. So it was an entertaining read. But that was pretty much all it was for me. I didn't get a whole lot more depth out of it. Just personally, I think maybe some people would, because there's a lot of allegory in it. This time around, it was just entertaining to me. I may continue the series if I find the books. I have no pressing desire to, but I would be open to it. All right, the next book that I finished in July is a nonfiction. It's called Boyhood Beyond: Practical Wisdom for Becoming a Man. I hope my microphone is picking all this up. So this is by Bob Schultz, and I read this probably around the age of 11 or 12, and just picked it up again, wanted to dig back into it. It is written geared towards young boys aspiring towards manhood. But Bob Schultz has a gift in writing to boys and stirring up a desire in boys to want to achieve manhood and what that means, courage, discipline, the ability to work and provide and protect and respect, and all these things that go into it. So just a brief synopsis on the back. Boys who are on the road to becoming men of honor, courage, and faith will greatly benefit from the heartfelt encouragement and sound advice offered in Boyhood and Beyond. And that is very true. I read it again. I am now 32, The truths in this are still just as good and applicable and challenging. So I definitely recommend this to anyone with boys. If you want to inspire them, it's definitely one that's going to stay on my shelf. If I'm ever blessed and entrusted with a family of my own, this will have a place. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars. So good. Bob Schultz has at least 3 other books that are all just as good and very similar topic. Chapters are pretty short. You usually start out with some kind of story, and then the point that is illustrated through that. The third book I finished was Heretics by G.K. Chesterton, and there is so much that I could talk about in this book. Every chapter I probably read twice over, sometimes 3 times over, just to try and soak in the thought processes and the logic. And so a couple weeks after finishing this book, the main takeaways for me, first of all, I just love how Chesterton approaches ideas and beliefs and truths and challenges them, and just how logical he is in thinking things through, but also the importance that he gives towards including the rational, logical mind, being able to think about things, but also giving place to the wonder and the divine revelation and the things that are of the Spirit. It's a great balance is what he brings in. But one thing that stuck with me, he talked about what he called the negative spirit, and it was just an interesting idea of how he's noticing in his day, and I think even more prevalent in my time, how the motivation for people is always to avoid a negative in why they do certain things, instead of being inspired by something that is good and that they're striving for, or something that a part of creation that they are given to enjoy. As an example, exercise. He talked about exercise and how so many people do it to avoid a negative instead of to enjoy a benefit. And that's just an interesting concept, and that's just touching on it very briefly and simply, but that's something that's just stuck with me since reading this. And I've noticed now how much that is true of myself, how much I do things simply to avoid a negative consequence. And it can touch on even our relationship with God, most importantly, I think. Are we serving God to avoid a negative? Are we serving God to avoid punishment, the flames of hell? Or are we serving God because of who he is and all that he has in store for us and the relationship that he offers? And it's been a challenging thing for me. Chesterton writes a chapter. The first half of the chapter, you're wondering, where on earth is he going with this? Why is this being talked about? And then all of a sudden, right at the end of the chapter, it all comes together and makes sense. And it's like, this is a perfect foundation he was laying throughout the whole chapter. So I have to read him slow, but I love reading his works. Heretics kind of addresses things that he sees in his day that he disagrees with and sees as dangers and flaws in thought. And orthodoxy, which is the one I'm in now, he talks about more his side of things and how he came to believe what he believes. So Heretics, I gave it 5 stars. I do recommend it. I got so much out of it, and I probably will be reading this again at some point in the future. Number 4 on my completed reads list, and this one I did read entirely in July, is the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I have read this one also many years ago, probably in my teen years, and I also listened to an audio. I think it was focused on the family, but it was mainly narrated by Andy Serkis, who plays Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movies. But this book, just every time I read it, it just is one of those classic eye-opener kind of books. And I just love how clearly it is illustrated that the simplest things in life can have such cosmic implications. Some of the littlest decisions that we make that we don't even think about sometimes can have implications that we don't even realize. And just little things like our daily relationship with the people we are around every day, our immediate families, or how we interact with strangers, or even how we interact with just the creation around us, and how we view the world around us. Little things like that. It's just interesting and eye-opening. But this is fiction. It's written as letters of a master tempter devil writing to his nephew, who is a new tempter and assigned to a human. So it's fictional in that sense. It's written very engaging because of that. Every chapter, it's pretty short chapters. Each chapter is a letter. And C.S. Lewis, he has had the gift of being able to write in a very understandable way that you can follow his train of thought. Again, I would recommend this to anyone at any point. I gave this one 5 stars. It's a classic for a reason. It's so good. Very thought-provoking. Lots of good stuff in here. The 5th book that I finished in the month of July was The King's Sword by none other than yours truly.
So you're going to drink from that cup.
So I wrote this book 10 years ago, and it's been a while since I actually read it myself. I dug back into it, and I'm not going to talk a whole lot. I'm going to link in the description my Goodreads write-up because I think that says it best. Basic takeaway is, yes, I can see how much I have improved in my writing style and in my plotting and character development, and just because of my understanding of life in the world and just being able to think better and see things through a more mature eye. But the essence of this story is just still very good, and maybe it's just because I read it and it brings back those old feelings of the time when I wrote it, but it just has a good feel to it to me. It's a fantasy fiction. I still recommend the read, obviously. I did not give it any stars because, I don't know. I just feel like because I wrote it, I'm not going to put stars to my own book. I'm not getting down on anyone who does that. I couldn't think of any good way to do it for me personally.
What she means is she doesn't think you can.
I've never had negative feedback for this book, and it has reached quite a variety, especially in ages, of people that actually surprised me that liked it. Someone who is no longer with us on Earth, she was a widow that we would mow lawns for, and she read it. It was my original copy. It wasn't this cover. This is kind of like, I would say, a director's cut from the original publishing, which was through a publisher that has gone bankrupt, and this is a self-published copy. She was in her early 90s, and she loved it. And her daughter, which I didn't find out until years later, had picked up a copy, and she had a book reading group, a book club, and they all read it, and apparently they loved it. I've had younger readers eat it up.
Bravo. An extraordinary performance.
If you guys are interested, check it out. It is available on Amazon if you have Prime. I do have signed copies available, which this is one, on my Etsy shop, which is also in the description below. So that is the 5 books that I read and finished in July. And I just wanted to film my video outside today. It is a gorgeous day. I think it's somewhere around 71 degrees. It's sunny, there's a cool breeze, and keeping the bugs off. And I just wanted to be outside today since I've been sitting in an office. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts are on them. See, this is my second Booktube video I've done, and I've been considering officially joining Booktube with the Booktube newbie tag. I haven't decided fully yet. Let me know if you guys want me to do that, because the main content on this channel, again, is more writing based. and following my journey of the current books I'm working on. But I've kind of gotten involved in the Booktube community through that, and a big part of the process of writing is reading other works and drawing from them, learning from them. So that's kind of how the Booktube side came in for this channel. And I'm going to continue doing that. So reading and writing, I mean, they go together. So hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you guys on the next video.